Today, we're talking to Mario Ciabarra, CEO and founder at Quantum Metric, about how they're leading the revolution of digital analytics with AI. You're listening to Joel Beasley, Modern CTO.
I play games, like I play a little Fortnite with my son and stuff like that, but Super Mario, it's a little bit outdated, I guess, but I'll play it if it comes up, or Mario Kart, let's go.
My kids are fans, and I do play Mario Kart on the Wii with them. Yeah.
Nice. How old are your kids, Joel? Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. I have 3 kids under 7, so 7, 5, and 2.
All right. Well, I've got 3 kids over 7. They're 13, 15, and 17. So
Is that a tough time? I think it is.
They're all tough times, and they're all enjoyable times is what I would share. But there's some good and some bad and some crazy, but whatever. It all works.
Yes. That is absolutely the truth. Well, what I had as our main goal today was to help the audience understand what a digital analyst does and what an AI-powered digital analyst can do. And so I want to start there. Like, what is a digital analyst?
When we started the company, we made these T-shirts saying, "We make it simple." And part of the rationale behind those is like analytics in general is not very friendly or inviting or easy to both understand and operate. Think about analytics. I think it's like if you have one person in a store, you don't really need analytics. You can watch someone's experience, you can talk to them, you can understand what's working and what's not. Analytics starts to come into play when we use the word scale. And so if you think about a digital analyst, it's someone that's trying to analyze some part of their business to understand something to improve. So an analyst might be on a retailer, like, how do I improve my conversion? How do I improve people going through my checkout funnel? Both, it could be things focused on top of the funnel, it could be bottom of the funnel, somewhere in a funnel. How do I get people to complete a specific task? And that's the job of an analyst. And so when we think about what the challenges of are for a digital analyst, it's like, how do I crunch all these numbers? How do I interpret all this data? How do I solve for getting people through that funnel? But I can't spend the next 6 months. And if I think about it, like sometimes they're micro level issues and sometimes macro. So micro would be, what did Joel do? And why did Joel fill out a survey or call my call center or email or chat and saying, I have a problem? So how do I understand Joel quickly? Because it could be hours or days to understand Joel. And that scale problem comes into play. Like, what if I have 1 million Joels today? I just can't solve for that. So that's like, how do I make this efficient? And then there's the macro. Like, I don't have specifically one person saying this or that. I'm looking at a funnel and seeing people not complete the task of buying something, for example. How do I make it better?
And so that's what an analog analyst will sit there and comb through the numbers, and that's what they're looking for. When I say analog, I mean like a human. Like, so a human person that's doing the digital analyst stuff is looking through the analytics, trying to find meaningful things and ways to improve. Is that correct?
Well, no, I would say you have analog and digital, which I don't think would be the words I would use. And then you have like AI and non-AI. So digital versus non-digital is like a digital analyst is an analyst looking at like a website or app. An AI empowered versus just the human would be like, how do we take and crunch this data using more automation to do the analysis? Like, so think about a process of like, why are people falling out of this funnel? There's a bunch of manual work that we're going to use systems like Quantum to analyze, look at graphs and charts and reports and try to figure it all out. How do we make that more automated? How do we make that easier for the human to understand that data? Because there's a lot of data being sent to these humans across these digital properties.
Do you have any specific examples of how the AI-powered analyst has uncovered insights that maybe would be missed by traditional methods?
Yeah, I think like not just the words missed, I think the speed. And let me give you an example of what I see changing. Imagine that you go to an airline's website and you're trying to change your flight and you get an error. And you keep trying and you try and you try and it's just not working. What's Joel going to do? More likely than not, Joel's going to call in and they're going to, ask Joel to press 1 through 9 on the, IVR. And Joel presses 4 and he gets an agent and, hi, Joel, how are you? Well, trying to change my flight. Oh, Joel, you trying to change your flight? Hold on, let me transfer you. Hi, Joel, how are you? Now imagine instead that call looks like you don't press 1 through 9, you get routed to the expert that can handle your call. And they say, hi, Joel, it looks like you're trying to change your flight. Looks like you got an error in the app. Sorry about that. Can I help you with this or something else? And the difference between those two experiences, if you think about it, every airline collects data about what's Joel doing on the website. The difference is, how do they analyze that data in a short period of time, in 1 to 2 seconds, and be able to connect that into the agent and saying, hey, this is Joel's problem. Here's a script that you can read to make Joel understand that we know this issue. We can jump right to it versus the back and forth and the transfer and the pressing the 1 through 9. So it's really about how can I activate this as a new use cases when I can understand it in seconds?
Is this theory or do you have this out in the wild?
This is what's driving our success today. So I hope, Joel, both you and the listeners today, every time you press 1 through 9 on your phone, you're like, where's Mario? Where's Quantum Metric? Why are they wasting my time?
That happened this week. I had to call an attorney and he had the best Google reviews, and I, business attorney, and I was like, hey, all right, let's talk to this guy. He's the best one. And I call him, and it was the most 1989 archaic system in the world. Are you guys doing anything for small businesses or mostly enterprises?
It's mostly enterprises, just because our motion today has been like, hey, look, if the same effort to do this at a small company, a large company is the same, and there's a better outcome for our business, it makes more sense. We're constantly looking at like, hey, we crack this, because like I think one of the things that makes it more viable for the large enterprise is the deployment. Like, how much effort is this to get standing up, and how much work is it to continue like on a day-to-day basis to make sure that they're successful? And there's a good amount of work involved, which is why it makes more sense at the enterprise. There's also another problem I mentioned earlier around why we have analytics is a scale problem. If it's like, if there's 3 people calling in, they should just take the phone call, right? Like they shouldn't even have the IVR and make you go through it. But if there's 3 million, like that's when it makes sense. So there's a scale issue, and then there's an implementation and management issue. What we're working on today is, how do we automate the deployment of what we do? How do we automate the understanding of what we do? Not just in that call center use case, but of course, we service product owners or engineering owners or operations owners or design owners or executives. Like, how do we get them to see the value of what we do in seconds and all their different use cases? So that's what we're working on. And how do we get our product deployed to give them those insights very quickly? So we're using generative AI to actually do those, to solve those exact problems, which is really exciting. Like, this whole space has been, I mentioned earlier, like we made these t-shirts say, we make it easy. We did make it easy in the beginning. And then we started solving more and more use cases. And I just look in the eye and say, it became more complicated. And so we stopped making these t-shirts that we make it easy. And we've been joking about like, wow, we should probably put more t-shirts on to say we make it easy again, because using generative AI, we're solving for the things that made it complicated and hard. So I guess I'd say we solved one use case and it was easy. We made it easy to do that. But as we solved more and more use cases, it became hard. And I think with generative AI, we're going to collapse that back to, look, we're going to solve these large amount of use cases, but we have to do it in a way that's easy to our customer. So that's like an exciting advancement. I think if we look ahead at 2025, how do we use generative AI to make analytics easy?
I want you to make it magical, man. I want the technology to be so advanced it's indistinguishable from magic.
I joke around with, our company name is Quantum Metric. Sometimes you see these kind of like visions of the future and you're like, wow, this is like quantum magic.
It is. There you go. You guys could make some memes in your Slack channels or whatever chat
I'm all in. I'm all in.
What makes a good generative AI strategy? I got an email the other day that said 1 out of every 8 transformation AI type projects actually sees the light of day and succeeds. And I was like, well, that's like a 90% failure rate. Is that true? Do you see a lot of people failing to achieve these Gen AI projects?
I think that's okay. I think that in itself is a myth. I think it's way higher because I think we, like any new technology, we're, wow, like this could solve everything and it's a panacea. And then we start to get, I think Gartner calls it this trough of disillusionment, et cetera. Like there's this hype cycle. And what is it that we see working? I think Sam Altman of OpenAI, as we all know, he knew early on. I was in a conference where he shared, I think the early successes, 24, 25, will be in call center technology. Like he knew it. And I think part of it is because it's like the paradigm shift. Like if you're a technologist listening to this podcast, you probably can relate with this concept of like, deterministic outcomes. If I give a program the same inputs, I'll end up with the same outputs. And that's not generative AI. We know this in our own personal consumption of generative AI. We ask the same question 7 times, we get 7 different answers. Sometimes they're pretty similar. Sometimes they could be on different ends of the spectrum. Sometimes a yes can be a no when we ask it a very direct question. And that doesn't make sense in our programming past and like the fundamentals of what we learned about technology doesn't make quite sense. And so I think like there was this, wow, it can do anything perspective. And so we can apply it anywhere. And I think we've all come to realize that's not true. Where can we apply it? And we saw this first wave of, I'll just use the words like co-piloting, because we realized like the machine can't do it perfectly. So we're gonna need a human in a loop, and a human plus the machine can do better. And so we're trying to figure out like, what are the applications where this drives real economic benefit in organizations? And so I've seen a lot of people say, Gen AI, like, hey, we have Gen AI X or Y, or we rebranded, or we pivoted to generative AI. And most of those, I agree with a strong taste of skepticism, because there's a lot of people saying they have something that does something with generative AI that doesn't really have economic benefit. And it works great in a single demo. And so I look at like the bar to pass of like, is this one of the successes? Does it work at a high consistency rate for the objective it was trying to do? Not did it work in the demo? Because people always show me good demos. How do you go off and create this? I'll tell you, I have seen so much hype, you as well, like blockchain, big data, even the word AI without the gen on side of, there's real economic benefit that could come from any of these technologies. It was just hard to find. And I think generative AI is slightly different, but I'll call all of those like the hype of the year kind of projects that didn't really conflate to economic value for most businesses that looked at it. We have Web3, we have, tokens. We've got so many different things that people have put out that, got hype and deflated quickly. I think generative AI is going to be different. And I didn't believe it up front. One of our board members called me up and said, what's your generative AI strategy? And I said, you know what? It was John Chambers, the CEO of Cisco for 20 plus years. And I'm like, John, I'm really good with product. Like, this is my forte, engineering. I don't really subscribe to the latest hype or the shiny objects. I don't have a generative AI strategy. And it's like if he had asked me 3-4 years ago, what's your blockchain strategy? I would probably just roll my eyes, and say, John, probably nothing. So, we moved on in that conversation, but he ended up calling my CMO. He called my head of product, my head of engineering. And I think what really struck me is he called my CFO, like all independent calls. And he said the same question, what is Quantum Metric's generative AI strategy? And they all said, like, we don't really have one. Like, Mario really doesn't want one. And when he called my CFO and asked it, I think this like something snapped. Like, why would you call the head of finance to ask him about generative AI? And I started to realize what I lean on John for, he's a great human leader. He has incredible business acumen. But what I love about John the most, I would say, is that he's really good at understanding how to lead, how to create the right culture for an organization to succeed. So I lean him on probably that for more than anything else. So when he comes and tells me about technology ideas, I'm like, kind of listening, but kind of not. And the other part, I realized that John has been very successful in his career. You might not know it, but he, is afflicted with dyslexia. And it was something that he suffered strongly during his childhood more than I would say today, because he's figured out a way to work around it. He figured out like most people go from one point to another in a straight line because that's the fastest path. He found a way to beat them on a curved line, which doesn't make any sense in physics, but he found a way to see things different than others. And I would start to say the words like seeing around corners, seeing around market transitions that other people aren't seeing because of this challenge, or you might say gift. And I started realizing, why is he pushing me so hard? He never called me about blockchain. He never called me about these other hype cycles that happen. Why is he calling and pushing so much on generative AI? And it was at that moment I realized, I think he sees a market transition here. I think he's seeing around a corner that I'm not seeing. And I said, maybe we should really explore this. So the path to creating the right Gen AI strategy for me was we came up with like 10 ideas. And which 10 ideas was going to have our audience react? So I was at a conference, and I love conferences because it's a great testing bed because you get to meet so many people so in such a short period span of time that you can test a lot of ideas and see the reactions. So here I was at this conference, a number of senior level executives I got to interact with over the course of 3 days. And I was pitching them all a couple of different ideas around generative AI. One of them, people were like, their eyebrows raised and they said, wow, we could do that? I was like, okay, no, not yet. We're going to go back and we're going to go attempt to do this. So we spent 6 months attempting to do it. And there was all these like early hints of success where we were like, wow, it's working. But back to that discussion I was saying earlier, like it works once or it works twice. And like my bar for the team is like, does it work 19 out of 20 times? Does it work 95% plus? Like that's what we have to get to before I start feeling really good about this generative AI solution. And we kept iterating and iterating. I think one of the false veils of generative AI, it's so easy. It's like putting two Lego blocks together. Like you can get it to work so quickly, but you can't see, does it work consistently without you testing over and over in different data sets. And I think that's one of the things that, if people walk away from this podcast thinking it's not about getting the two Lego blocks together and you can get it to work, because like linking an API into like Gemini is super simple. We could be done by the end of the hour and you could say, wow, Mario works. But it's really about that patience for how do you test and determine its consistency? Like, does it really work the majority of the time? And I think that's like the big leap on bringing a generative AI project to market. Can you get it to work in all different sorts of circumstances for whatever project you're trying to solve for? So we had this idea, we tested the story of it working, and it resonated strongly with executive leaders. And then we iterated. And, I think some of the takeaways that I would have had were like finding the right data set to get to the right answer in the most consistent way was probably the most secretive piece of our success. Is really hard to figure out what goes in really changes on what comes out. And I can go into more detail about it if you like, Joel. But I think like how do you come up with a great generative AI strategy is list 10 ideas, of things that you probably could create, and then go test the market. Like, do any of those 10 ideas resonate with your audience? If it's none, come up with another 10. If one of those ideas resonates very strongly, and I like the words like gets people to get out of their seat, that's the project I'd go work on.
Yeah, so you stole the scientific method.
Yeah. I mean, none of this is like super secretive. Like, oh my gosh, Mario has the key to success that no one else has. It's like I think I'll tell you in that same vein. Quantum has become a multi-billion-dollar success, and probably the meanest thing I say to people is it's not hard to create a multi-billion-dollar success. I really don't think it is. I think it's like execution day in and day out. And like I remain passionate as I was 10 years ago. And if you can stay passionate about what you do, like every day is a joy. And it's not like there's no secret shortcut to get there. It's a hustle and it's staying passionate, and you can create a great, economic success, a successful business. But the same thing around generative AI. It's just like, you got to do the hustle. You got to do the work. He's not going to get on this podcast and have this like super secretive, like, oh, that's how you do it really with ease and in 2 seconds. So it's just hard work, and you better love the hard work or else it's probably not going to work out. You're going to end up like the kids at the soccer game that want to quit after the first game.
So I want to make sure that we cover like exactly what Quantum does, and then how brands can reach out to you to use your product or service.
Yeah, Quantum Metric is a digital experience platform, and those words start to confuse folks on, what can analytics do for my organization. So I'd love to kind of just switch it into just a conversation of ways that the understanding of what a customer is doing on digital impacts our day-to-day lives. So one of the projects we've released in March is called Felix AI. It's a generative AI solution that can summarize what someone is doing on digital for different audiences. What's really exciting me, Joel, is Felix AI. It's the world's first Gen AI digital analyst. And what that really translates into in easy understanding is, imagine you're trying to understand, is a customer happy or not? Or where's what's causing friction on your website or app or kiosk or anywhere there's a digital touch point? Imagine instead of having to spend hours and days trying to track down the why, imagine generative AI just gives you the answer. It summarizes, why is this person or this segment of people frustrated? Why are they dropping off at the last step? Like, what is the root cause of the issue? Without you having to dig through the data, it can do the analysis automatically. So I'm just super honored, super excited that we're able to find a generative AI use case that our customers have fallen in love with, and to be the world's first Gen AI digital analyst with Felix AI.
That sounds amazing.
It's fun every day when your customers say how impactful you are in their organization. Like, selling software is, I don't think that's that fun, but selling impactful change in an organization. I was talking to the chief digital officer of another telco in the US, and he said to me, do you know what Quantum Metric is doing at our organization? And I said, I'd love to hear in your words. And he said, it's changing the culture of the organization. This is a 150-year-old telco. And could you imagine the words changing culture? Like, how can software change culture? And what he described to me was, he has two direct reports. He's got business and product, and he's got technology. And they come into the room in the past and they would fight, like, hey, here's our marketing priority, here's our product priority, here's our design priority, and here's our tech priority, here's our DevOps priority. Now, and he had to be like the parent in the room to kind of negotiate how, which priorities are going to win. Now they come into the room with, here's our customer priority. And that was a massive change for that culture because, it's easy to get siloed. It's easy to say, here's our priority and our part of the organization. I like to ask executives, like, look, if I call every one of your direct reports into the room and I ask them, what's the company's top priority? Well, they all say the same thing. And they often look at me and laugh. Like, no, they're all like centered in their own kind of universe, in their own persona. Like, I'm in product, I'm in DevOps, I'm in voice of customer. But if you can make that shift to, let's put the customer at the heart of what we do, and we'll start to automatically get alignment on where we can have the biggest impact for our customer, which translates into the biggest impact for our business. That's the most rewarding part about the journey we're on. Like, it's a weird thing to say. Our mission statement is, we help companies build cultures maniacally focused on winning the hearts of their customer. Now, people, when you say you're a digital analytics platform and you say that mission, they'll look at you a little bit weird, Joel, because it's hard to connect. How is analytics or data going to change my culture? But we see it over and over again. We didn't come up with that mission statement because it sounded good. We came up with it because we kept asking customers, like, what do we do for you? And they kept saying, like, well, we're seeing cultural changes in our organization to align around the customer. It's been a fun journey.
Well, and you're able to track it, and you're able to see and share success stories. And when you put a fix in place, you can quantify it.
That sentence you just said, Joel, it seems so obvious. So many organizations will spend a week, a month, 6 months doing a release. They release it. Some don't even look at what the impact was. Some look at the impact and say, wow, we didn't move the needle at all. Because when they go back to those planning stages, oh, well, we have a guess that this is going to be better. If we make this change, but imagine instead of guessing, you use data, you understood the why people were failing to complete some task you were hoping they would do with higher percentages, and you use data and you use the ability to see what they were doing, say, wow, they're getting stuck right there. Let's remove that friction point. Let's optimize here. And it's amazing what data can do to align on, we can have an impact.
So as far as people reaching out to you, what is the best way to go about getting more information from Quantum?
It's easy to go to our website, quantummetric.com, to read more about how Felix AI is having an impact in the enterprise. And it's really about aligning the entire organization on what does it look like from the customer. And instead of spending hours, or these companies sometimes spend days with multiple people trying to understand what one person's doing, what Joel is doing, and why he's mad, why he left something on X or on Reddit or on TikTok, or just filled out a survey and said, I'm upset. It sometimes takes hours a day. Can you imagine, if you're a large organization, how many Joels there are, how many people filling out surveys or giving feedback? And how can I understand the why? Now, organizations do all of that today, but they spend so much time doing it. Imagine simplifying that using generative AI to take all of this data that we have about Joel and his experience and summarizing it. Joel is upset because he tried to apply a promo code and it gave him an error. And like a fun example of that actually happening in the real world is one of the companies that we work with, they sent out promo codes. Huge hit to the website. People were really excited about getting 20% off. It was something like Fall Holidays was the name of the promo code, and it was working. People were applying it on the desktop. They came to find out using Quantum. On mobile, you know what happens? You type Fall Holidays in a mobile text field. Do you know what happens?
No.
It puts a space between fall and holidays. So they type Fall Holidays, but it ends up Fall space holidays for autocorrect. They hit apply, it doesn't work. So this company, this brand started using Quantum. They're like, oh my gosh, we sent out this marketing campaign. We're getting the traffic. It's not converting. And they get to, a couple of layers deep to understand the why, to use Felix AI and saying they're typing this promo code and it's not working. And immediately like, wow, it's got a space in it. So they went back and they added Fall space holidays as a promo code, and they made millions of dollars and more revenue from that campaign. So it's understanding like what's causing that friction.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Mario. I really appreciate it. We made a podcast. How do you feel?
Well, when people ask me, how's my day going, how I feel, I only have one answer, Joel. Every day is a great day. So I feel phenomenal, literally just every day. And as we talked about that point of optimism, it's not like you can't force yourself. You just have to believe, and it's just intrinsic in who I am. And I just think like have a positive outlook. You will manifest success by having a positive outlook. So how do I feel? I feel phenomenal. Thank you, Joel. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. And if you found this episode useful, please share it with a friend or a colleague who you think would get value from it. And if you have topics that you would like to hear discussed on the podcast, either add me on LinkedIn or send me an email, joel@moderncto.io. Every time I get an email or LinkedIn message, it absolutely makes my day and inspires me to keep going.